Okay, so it's an Insight channel, Steve here. This is taken from the second book of Enoch, which I'm working on at the moment to make a new book, probably a Enoch Insights book 2. And this is chapter 28. And then I made firm the heavenly circle, and made that the lower water which is under heaven collect itself together into one whole, and that the chaos become dry, and it became so. Now, by so saying, the lower water under heaven implies there's water also above the heaven. Of course, we know from creation science that there used to be a canopy of water around the earth before the flood, which kept out the ultraviolet radiation and other cosmic radiation, and that's why people would live to be 900 years and not, like modern times, 70 years. Verse 2. Out of the waves I created rock hard and big. From the rock I piled up the dry, and the dry I called earth. So it's showing the waters, or the seas, and out of it rock is coming out, or the earth is coming out of the seas. And I called it earth. In the midst of the earth I called abyss. Now look at this. What it's saying here, and the midst of the earth I called abyss. In other words, a bottomless pits. How can that happen unless the earth's hollow? So here it's declaring the earth is hollow. In the midst of the earth I called the abyss. In other words, a hollow place. That's exactly what it says also in Enoch chapter 22. Hollow places inside the earth. Actually, in Enoch book 1, chapter 22, it says 4 hollow places inside the earth. Big areas. Such big areas that can contain all the souls who ever lived, so it's got to be pretty big. Anyway, it says here, out of the waves I created rock hard and big, and from the rock I piled up the dry, and the dry I called earth, and in the midst of the earth I called abyss. An abyss by definition is hollow. That is to say the bottomless pits. Yeah. I collected the sea in one place and bound it together with a yoke. I said to the sea, behold, I give you your eternal limits, should not break loose from your component parts. Thus I make, what's important here is to realize that God gave laws to creation. The sea is supposed to abound where the sea is, the land is supposed to stay where it is. The earth is under perfect control, not just randomly break away from the solar system, or the seas suddenly cover the land unnecessarily. There are laws for all the creation and parts of creation. As he said, and I said to the sea, behold, I give you your eternal limits, and you shall not break loose from your component parts. 4. Thus I made fast the firmament, and this day I called me the first created day, on the Sunday. Well, there's only 4 verses in this chapter, but it's so much in it. It's just amazing how much is in each of the chapters of this second book of Enoch, just like unto the first book of Enoch, so much in each chapter that you have to go over with a fine-tooth comb to figure out what's it talking about, and where do we see the same sort of thing in Genesis and the Bible. Chapter 29. And for all the heavenly troops I imaged the image and essence of fire, and my eye looked at the very hard, firm rock. From the gleam of my eye the lightning received its wonderful nature, which is both fire and water and fire. What does that mean? One does not put out the other, nor does the one dry up the other. Therefore the lightning is brighter than the sun, softer than water, firmer than hard rock. What is that talking about? It seems here, God says this again and again, and I'll continue, verse 2. For the rock I cut off a great fire, and from the fire, it's like God standing on this big rock, and it's right next to the big chasm of fire. And from the fire I created the orders of the incorporeal 10 troops of angels, and their weapons are fiery, and their raiment a burning flame. And I command that each one should stand in his order. This is very, very interesting, because if you read Revelation chapter 1, a description of Jesus, it says his eyes was a flame of fire, and out of his mouth goeth a flaming sword. Right, in other words, inside his being is fire. And it seems the same with the angels. I heard the same description of the angels before. It's not the first time. Angels, they have fire. If you read the first book of Enoch, you will see, and I came to a place where God's angels were, and they were treading on fire. Right? So fire seems to be part of their being, but it's not a physical fire. It's greater than that. It says here, in the last verse, it said, the fire is like lightning, brighter than the sun, softer than water, firmer than hard rock. This is non-physical fire we're talking about here. This is spiritual fire, of which God made the angels. Very interesting. Wow. And look at this. Here's about Satan. Satan's, how he was demised. And from the rock I cut off a great fire. Okay, read that. Verse 3. And one from out of the order of angels, having turned away with the order that was under him, conceived an impossible thought, to place his throne higher than the clouds, above the earth, that he might become equal in rank to my power. And I threw him out from the height with his angels, and he was flying in the air continuously above the bottomless. Well, you can see clearly same sort of thing in Revelation chapter 12, when there was war in heaven. And Satan fought and his angels against Michael and his angels, and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven, or they were cast out of the spiritual dimensions. When it says heaven, it means the spiritual dimension. Cast out. And when he saw he was cast into the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth a man-child. This is talking about Satan getting cast out of the spirit world. Well, and I threw him out from the height with his angels, and he was flying in the air continuously above the bottomless. Well, it's showing the location where he is, the bottomless pit, inside the earth. In other words, the earth has become his prison. The inside of the earth has become his prison. Flying in the air continuously. It reminds of what it says in Job 1:7. And there came a day when the angels of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came with them. And God said unto Satan, from whence comest thou? And he says, from walking in the earth and walking up and down in it. In other words, Satan was not only going all around the earth to check everything's in order according to the way he wants things, but he was also walking inside the earth, where the bottomless is. Yeah, where the pit is. Yeah, because he also controls a lot to do with what's going inside the earth as well. Wow, very interesting. Chapter 30. On the third day I commanded the earth to make grow great and fruitful trees and hills. Now this is very interesting, the fact that it states, God is saying, to make great and fruitful trees and hills. Why? Because we now know there used to be a canopy of water around the earth, not very thick, maybe a meter thick or something, maybe 20 feet thick, maybe a few meters thick, but it had the net effect of keeping the sun dangerous rays out from the earth. And it kept cosmic rays away and radiation from space away, and the net result was people lived a lot longer. Instead of 100 years, they lived 900 years. But the canopy was destroyed at the time of the flood. Wow. But what I'm saying here is God is stating He's going to make very big trees. And it's estimated that the trees used to be 10 times as high in the times before the flood. Well, that's hardly surprising, because the earth acted, under the canopy of water, acted like a great big hyperbaric chamber. And the air was under pressure, and there was at least twice as much oxygen. Today we only have 21% oxygen on the planet on average. I think before the flood it was more like 40 to 50% oxygen. Not only was the oxygen much higher, but CO2 levels were much higher too. And all this fuss in modern times for global warming, CO2 is causing the trouble. It's absolute nonsense. You know, the slightest bit about science is the CO2 that caused the trees to grow big and high. So there was a lot more CO2 back in pre-flood times, and the trees became 10 times, and the vegetation 10 times what they are now in size. And there's evidence of that. I've no examples of Japanese scientist. He decided to put a much higher level of CO2 in his greenhouse, and he had one tomato plant, and that one tomato plant was able to grow 15,000 tomatoes, massive ones as well. So you change the conditions more like it was in pre-flood times with much higher CO2, you get much bigger plants and trees. So it doesn't surprise me that Satan's ilk are trying to convince people that CO2 is actually bad for you, when the opposite is true. CO2 is good for the plants, and the plants in turn produce the oxygen that we need. That's reality. Third day, I commanded the earth to make grow great and fruitful trees and hills, and seed to sow, and I planted paradise and enclosed it. That's interesting, because God's saying here, He planted paradise and enclosed it. That means that paradise is separated from the normal earth. It's on a different level. Garden of Eden on a different level. And I've said that, I said that in my book, Eden Insights, that it's on a different plane. It's on a slightly higher dimension. And so that when you come out of the Garden of Eden into the normal earth, it's like a ripple effect. It's like going through a portal. Very interesting. You need to read my book, Eden Insights, because that explains some fantastic things about what the Garden of Eden was really like. Amazing things. Why it was such great sorrow for Adam and Eve to get kicked out. What they lost. Amazing book. From the Lost Books, Adam and Eve. Fantastic books. See my book, Eden Insights, to get much more info on that. And I planted paradise and enclosed it. And another place says that God created the Garden of Eden before He created the earth. In other words, He did in another dimension, because God always does things in the spirit first before it happens in the flesh or in the physical. And placed an armed or guardian of flaming angels, and thus I created renewal. Now what does that mean? Interesting. So Garden of Eden is for renewal. But we also know that God knew that Adam and Eve would fall from the Garden of Eden. And if you read my book, Eden Insights, you'll find that Jesus was there at the beginning talking with Adam and Eve. And they kept trying to sneak back into the Garden of Eden like little children, but they couldn't get back in because there was an angel there with a flaming sword, or a cherubim. But Jesus told them, you can only get back in the Garden of Eden once I come to the earth and I die for all mankind. It says it right there, 5,000 years ago, in the Lost Books, Adam and Eve. And they are that old. You look into it, you find out. So just amazing. So renewal would be that once Christ came, 4,000 years after this time of Adam and Eve, that then there would be salvation, and eventually all those who love God can get back into the Garden of Eden, a separate place, a higher dimension. Amazing, just amazing. Verse 2, Then came evening and came morning the fourth day, which is consistent with what it says in Genesis. All these days are consistent with what Genesis says in the Bible. On the fourth day I commanded there should be great lights on the heavenly circles. That's suggesting that they already had these bodies there, but they weren't lit up yet. All those celestial bodies, stars, and that, they were turned into great lights on the fourth day. That's an interesting detail. God lit them up. In another place it says it was the angel's job to keep the sun lit. I suppose the stars as well. Because things are not quite as they seem. To us everything seems to be always shining like the sun or the stars. But apparently there are special angels which take care of the stars and the sun and everything else out there. It doesn't just happen. It's all well controlled by God through his angels. And other beings too. Verse 4. On the first... I'll read this again because it's too important. Verse 3. On the fourth day I commanded there should be great lights on the heavenly circles. So the heavenly circle already existed. God just turned the lights on, the stars and everything else. And on the first uppermost circle I placed the stars. It's very interesting here because now he's showing how that the stars in space, according to the Bible, the earth is the center of the universe, and then around us you've got planets going, even the sun revolving around, but now we know it's more like planets are revolving around the sun and the sun is revolving around the earth. And that's how it works, not the earth around the sun. It's a geocentric universe, not as we're told in science. Science falsely so called, as 1 Timothy 6:20 says. You have to realize that nearly all the things in this world, because they don't give God the credit and they don't believe in Jesus and God's word, it's just full of nothing but lies, controlled by Satan to deceive. Nothing but lies. Well, most of science is. It's just built on assumption and pride and arrogance of truth is whatever we say is because we said so, and don't you question it. That's how education is. That's not how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be able to ask questions, bounce the ball, find answers, and find the truth. But they don't care about the truth. That's how this world is. They just care about what makes money and what makes power and what makes them able to control the masses. That's how it is. It's not supposed to be that way. And you only find that out when you find God, when you find Jesus. Anyway, look at this verse 4. And on the first uppermost circle I place the stars, Chrono, on the second Aphrodite, on the third Eris, on the fifth Zoruf, on the sixth Hermes, and the seventh lesser the moon, adorned it with the lesser stars. That's talking about the planets, I believe. I think what God's saying here is, I made different circles of stars. And that's what science does manage to tell us. That yes, the stars are in different rings, if you want, further and further out. They can call their light years or hundreds of light years or whatever they want to say. That's not exactly how it really is, because it was all created at the same time with the light already reaching the earth when it was created. So there's so many calculations science makes us totally wrong. Nevertheless, they got it right. There are circles, one out the inside and then another circle, another, many rings like that going out of different light years, and there are stars on each of those rings. So that's what it's saying here too. And on the first uppermost circle I place the stars, Chrono, on the second Aphrodite, on the third Eris. These are just different stars and different circles of stars, different lengths away from the earth. And the closest ones is where the moon and the planets are, of course. On the lower levels I place the sun for the illumination of the day, moon and the stars for the illumination of the night. Yes, well, that's a good point. You could say, but why does it say the stars? I thought the stars are far away. Well, a lot of them are, but I guess he's talking about the closest stars. The closest stars, along with the moon, could give a illumination. Those are probably the ones it's talking about, the constellations. Actually, it says it next. Look at this. Verse 6. the sun, that it should go according to each constellation, 12. Yeah, like the 12 constellations of the 12 star signs that affect mankind. And it's a proven fact that each constellation affects the human beings and affects everything else. It's God's system of control. Keeps things varied, so not everybody is the same. So that's what those constellations are for signs and seasons, the Bible says. And I appointed the succession of the months and their names and lives, their thunderings and their hour markings, how they should succeed. So that's just talking about the zodiac and the influence of the constellations on mankind, God's creation. 7. Then evening came and morning came the 5th day, Thursday. And on the 5th day I commanded the sea that it should bring forth fishes and feathered birds of many varieties, and all animals creeping over the earth, going forth over the earth on 4 legs and soaring in the air, male, sex, and female.